I'm hearing booze in the audience. The Constitution, yes, they did. Three elections in a row.
You cannot compare
I can, because they're going through what they deem to be a legal process. I think it's illegal, no matter which party does it. Because there's nowhere in the Constitution that says Congress gets to certify the election. They don't even use that word. This is based on an old 1886 law from the Reconstruction era. It's for a very different situation. We need to get rid of that entire process.
We need to have a full page one rewrite of the Constitution, not that there aren't some great things in it.
No, this should have never been allowed to happen. I know he's a friend of yours. He's a friend of CNN. That's why nobody watches CNN anymore, because they have no credibility. Okay, who else?
Last time the world watched as Bill Maher completely dismantled Kaitlan Collins live on air. But the truth is, that was only the tip of the iceberg. Some of the most jaw-dropping moments had to be left out simply because time ran short, but not this time. In this segment, the tape rewinds to the exact moment when Maher sent Collins crashing to the canvas. No gloves, no mercy. And just when it seemed the situation couldn't spiral any further for her, another layer unfolded, revealing how Kaitlan plays the game dirty. With her signature smug tactics, she attempted to corner both Trump and J.D. Vance, carefully laying traps designed for her next headline-friendly spin, a move straight out of the old media circus playbook. So buckle up, because Bill Maher is back, and once again, he's about to deliver another brutal and unapologetic verbal takedown.
Also to act like what Democrats have done before, which is often something that Republicans, when we have them on my show, say when we talk about January 6th and the fake electors and Trump refusing to admit that he lost the election. There was barely a peaceful transfer of power. They actually wouldn't even allow them to move forward with getting federal funding to start the transition for weeks. I remember it was because we found out about a little-known position that no one in the federal government even really knew much about because of that. But also, the difference then is Joe Biden went and certified the election. He was the vice president then, and he certified Donald Trump's election and did not, there was not a massive... because Mike Pence was pressured not to by Donald Trump.
The entire process of certification is...
Before Bill Maher even entered the conversation, one moment from Kaitlan Collins set the tone for everything that was about to unfold. For Kaitlan, Republicans aren't simply political opponents. In her eyes, they represent something far worse, almost villainous, deserving to be dragged through the mud at every opportunity. On the other hand, Democrats could do no wrong. They are practically untouchable, elevated to the level of saints. A perfect example of this unfolded when she openly praised Joe Biden for certifying the 2017 election, framing him as though he had performed a selfless act of heroism for democracy. But the moment anyone reminded her that Mike Pence had done the exact same thing in 2021, Kaitlan was quick to twist the conversation, dismissing the comparison as irrelevant, as if it never mattered in the first place. This wasn't a simple oversight, it was a clear display of tactical hypocrisy. Her approach had little to do with journalism and everything to do with carefully staged political theater. Kaitlan doesn't just reveal her bias occasionally. She wears it like a shield, wrapping herself in it with pride. Her mission isn't to inform the public. It's to twist, spin, and tear apart anything or anyone that doesn't fit her worldview. In Kaitlan's world, there are no gray areas. If you're not aligned with the blue side, you're automatically the villain. That's precisely why Donald Trump once called her a nasty person, right to her face. A moment that left a lasting mark. But the real turning point came when Bill Maher took the stage and systematically dismantled Kaitlan Collins for her behavior, exposing the very bias and double standards she thought she had so cleverly concealed.
Democrats opened this door, Republicans ran through it. Congress, I'm hearing booze in the audience. The Constitution, yes, they did. Three elections in a row.
You cannot compare
I can, because they're going through what they deem to be a legal process. I think it's illegal, no matter which party does it. Because there's nowhere in the Constitution that says Congress gets to certify the election. They don't even use that word. This is based on an old 1886 law from the Reconstruction era. It's for a very different situation. We need to get rid of that entire process.
We need to have a full page one rewrite of the Constitution, not that there aren't some great things in it.
We have the oldest Constitution in the world.
Right, and some of it is ridiculous. I live in a state with 40 million people, and I get 2 senators, and the Dakota Territory gets 4.
And there it was. Bill Maher delivered a sharp and unflinching takedown of Kaitlan Collins, calling out her blatant double standards with precision. The point was simple. If outdated bureaucratic nonsense is embedded in the Constitution, then call it what it is, regardless of which party holds power. But Kaitlan's approach tells a different story. She only finds her outrage when it conveniently fits her narrative. When Republicans are steering the ship, suddenly the Constitution becomes a dangerous and outdated document in her eyes. But the moment Democrats take control, it magically transforms into sacred scripture, untouchable and flawless. Bill Maher, never one to sugarcoat the truth, addressed the hypocrisy head-on. He acknowledged what so many in the media are too afraid to say, that some parts of the Constitution simply don't stand the test of time, and are long overdue for serious revision. And while he didn't call Kaitlan out by name, the message couldn't have been more direct. You could feel that he was speaking straight through the camera, challenging her and every other journalist trapped in the cycle of party-first thinking. His message was clear. Stop hiding behind political loyalty, stop twisting reality to fit an agenda, and start calling things as they are, whether the story paints Republicans or Democrats in a bad light. Because at the end of the day, real journalism doesn't pick sides. But Kaitlan, well, she seems more like the captain of the partisan cheer squad than a neutral observer. And if there's any doubt about that, the next example makes it even harder to deny.
This is a really important point, Kaitlan. Who is the number 3 person from the Biden Department of Justice who went to work for the New York prosecutor just months before he brought this case against Donald Trump? You can't have people moving from the Biden administration to prosecute Donald Trump in New York and say it has nothing to do with the Biden administration, especially when the judge is the Biden administration donor.
To local DA's offices all the time. That's not that unusual. I mean, you're an attorney, you know that.
It's pretty
unusual. Probably have colleagues who went to Yale with you that did that.
It's pretty unusual for the number 3 person in the Department of Justice to then go to the New York prosecutor's office to bring a bogus case against Donald Trump, and then to have the judge presiding over that case to be a donor to Biden-Harris. I think that's pretty unusual, Kaitlan, and really is, aside from your views or anyone else's views about Donald Trump, this is a real threat to Americans' trust in the legal system.
J.D. Vance didn't waste a single second sugarcoating his response. He called a spade, loud and clear. Vance knew exactly what kind of game was unfolding in front of him. He recognized the pattern, the strategy, and the intent behind every carefully framed question. The Democratic Party, in his eyes, was throwing everything but the kitchen sink at Donald Trump, doing whatever it took to prevent him from setting foot back in the White House. And standing at the center of that media front was none other than Kaitlan Collins. But Vance didn't blink. He didn't stutter, and he didn't backpedal. Instead, he went straight for the jugular, calling out Kaitlan for doing exactly what she's known for, putting words in Trump's mouth. When she tried to back him into a corner, painting Trump as the mastermind behind a so-called coup on January 6th, Vance didn't flinch. He fired right back, accusing her of twisting Trump's words, weaponizing his language, and manufacturing a narrative that simply didn't exist. It was a true mic drop moment, one that laid bare just how far some in the media are willing to bend reality for the sake of a headline. Kaitlan wasn't there to ask fair questions. She wasn't seeking truth. She was building a case, and Vance saw the blueprint from a mile away. But instead of stepping into her trap, he flipped the entire script. And in that single exchange, the power dynamic in the room shifted entirely.
Trump's team, his attorney, argued that a president could order the military to stage a coup and to have their political opponent assassinated and be immune from prosecution unless this theory that they were impeached and then convicted by the Senate. Do you share the view that presidents are basically above the law?
Look, Kaitlan, I think we have to be careful about imputing words into the president's attorneys that they didn't actually say. What the president's attorney said is that what the president's attorney said, Kaitlan, to be clear, is that there is a checks and balances system in our Constitution. Now, some things the president does, private acts, are liable to criminal penalties, but most of the things that the president does in their official duties, we have a system of impeachment, we have a system of checks and balances, the legislative branch that I'm a member of, the judicial branch. I do not read the president's attorneys as saying that the president could order a coup. The president's attorneys are saying that the constitutional checks and balances system would address that problem, and I think that's an important distinction.
But let me stop you right there, because I listened to this. It's John Sauer, Trump's attorney, and when he was asked by one of the justices if the president could order the military to stage a coup...
It's hard to miss what Kaitlan Collins is doing. Her strategy is as predictable as it is calculated. Time and time again, she tries to slip in arguments and accusations that Trump's own legal team never even put forward. It's classic Kaitlan. Slippery, strategic, and always fishing for that perfect gotcha moment to impress her audience and rack up those media brownie points. She's not there to report, she's there to set traps. But here's the reality of the situation. The argument isn't nearly as complicated as she wants people to believe. History has shown that plenty of presidents have made controversial decisions, some of which, when viewed in hindsight, might even appear borderline criminal. But the catch is, those actions were made under the authority of the presidency, a gray area that makes legal prosecution incredibly murky. And when it comes to Trump, let's be clear, he didn't summon tanks, He didn't issue military orders and he didn't instruct violence. What he did was call on his supporters to protest, and he used the word peacefully. Sure, some bad actors crossed the line, and nobody is excusing that, but the real debate is simple. Were Trump's words an actual call for civil unrest, or were they twisted into something they were never meant to be? That's where Kaitlan loses the plot entirely. Instead of allowing facts to stand on their own, she rewrites the narrative mid-conversation, banking on the idea that the audience won't catch on. But people did catch on. J.D. Vance saw it, the viewers saw it, and as it turns out, so did another sharp observer, Megyn Kelly.
I'm sorry, but she's only a star with leftists, and the fact that she has some roots in Alabama does not make her a fair and balanced reporter. I will submit to the record, her biggest sin is not that she is biased, though she is. It's that she's boring. She's extremely boring with no personality. I have a pro tip for her. Smile. Try smiling every once in a while. Try not to be, like, in your delivery, such a cold-hearted all the time, because it gives people nothing to bond to. You can be a tough interviewer and also have some warmth.
It's surprising how few people seem to notice, but the truth about Kaitlan Collins is hard to ignore. For all the effort she puts into branding herself as a fearless, hard-hitting journalist, her interviews land with all the excitement of a dull college lecture. Her questions sound like they were copy-pasted straight from a political intern's notepad, lacking any real depth or originality. And her delivery is so flat and lifeless, it drains the energy out of the room. There's no spark, no charisma, no sharp edge, just a self-important, monotonous tone that turns every segment into more of a chore than compelling television. It's no wonder CNN's ratings continue their steady decline. Viewers aren't interested in smug, scripted spin disguised as journalism. They're tired of the sanctimonious attitude and hollow virtue signaling. What audiences crave is real substance, paired with a little style and authenticity. Two things Kaitlan consistently fails to deliver. And no matter how many flattering puff pieces or blue checkmark tweets try to prop her up, the audience has already cast their vote with their remotes. At this point, even a late-night infomercial rerun offers more entertainment value. What Kaitlan claims as tough journalism feels more like a poorly rehearsed stage play. And as her credibility slips, the only thing she seems to be holding up is the exit door for CNN's remaining viewers. Interestingly enough, even Trump couldn't help but point out the same observation.
No, this should have never been allowed to happen. I know he's a friend of yours. He's a friend of CNN. That's why nobody watches CNN anymore, because they have no credibility. Okay,
Trump has always been the kind of figure who says things exactly as they are. No filters, no teleprompters, and certainly no rehearsed, carefully packaged sound bites. Unlike his opponent Kamala Harris, who dodges straightforward answers like it's an Olympic event and serves up word salads so tangled even Google Translate would give up, Trump doesn't tiptoe around the truth. He charges straight through it. And when he called out Kaitlan Collins, and by extension, her corporate bosses, for being in bed with the Democratic Party, the uncomfortable reality was that he wasn't wrong. The media's cozy relationship with the left has long been one of the worst-kept secrets in American politics, and Trump ripped the mask right off for everyone to see. Love him or hate him, he often says what millions are quietly thinking. He exposed the echo chamber, challenged the narrative, and reminded the world once again why the political establishment is so terrified of him. Trump doesn't just play the game, he flips the entire board over. And the media? They can't stand him for it because every time he opens his mouth, he peels back another layer of just how rigged their playbook really is.
And obviously, with the cars, all foreign-made cars, imports, are getting a 25% tariff starting at midnight. If half the cars coming into the United States are foreign-made, that's hard to turn around overnight, as you know. So what would you say to people in the auto industry who are worried about that timeline and how quickly that can shift?
Buy American.
And what about American-made cars and produced cars that are being made using foreign-made parts?
Well, I believe the USMCA is exempt.
Viewers watched as U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent effortlessly handled Kaitlan Collins, responding to her so-called complicated questions with calm and clear answers. Collins tried to maintain an air of sharpness, but the truth was hard to miss. She wasn't exactly reinventing journalism, and it showed. Rather than acknowledge when she was out of her depth, she leaned further into condescension, as if raising her voice could somehow validate her point. Everyone knows her political alignment, a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. and that isn't likely to change anytime soon. But if she hopes to retain even a shred of journalistic credibility, the least she could do is pretend to set aside her bias and actually perform the job she's paid to do. Ask fair, balanced questions, not stage another round of political theater. When a Treasury Secretary can calmly dismantle an entire argument using nothing but straight facts, it might be time to rethink the approach. Or at the very least, it should serve as a reminder to stop acting like the smartest person in the room when the scoreboard on live TV keeps proving otherwise. And with that, today's video came to a close.